As watch collectors, we all have our favorite complications, and some are more practical than others. Some are based on very rich history as far as their development goes, and some are purely cosmetic. But one of the most complicated complications and most useful complications with a rich history is the chronograph. And there's some debate about which company developed their chronograph movement, automatic chronograph movement that is, first, because those are the ones I'm talking about today, and specifically the 6139 by Seiko, because Seiko was officially the first company to bring their chronograph watches to market in May of 1969. And all these competitors had a release in 1969, but Seiko is sort of accepted as being the first to bring it to market, at least the Japanese market. But you also have the group called Project 99. Project 99 was a collaboration between watchmakers Heuer, Breitling, Hamilton, and specialist movement maker Dubois de Praz. And they came together and developed what they called the Chronomatic, which was their first foray into an automatic chronograph. Now, their first watches weren't released until sometime in the summer of 1969, so officially they came after, and I'll put officially in quotes because there's still some debate about when the absolute first models of Seiko were released. But the model that made this particular movement most famous is definitely the Heuer Monaco, made famous in the movie Le Mans, worn by Steve McQueen, who was truly iconic at the time. And this particular model went into production as a module on top of a traditional automatic movement, which made it a little more thicker in appearance than the Seiko that came before it. It's natural for people today to consider chronographs an instrument for measuring race times, right? They're most attributed to the use of, say, measuring a lap time in an automobile race or a sprint time at the Olympics. This is what people think of, but realistically, what chronographs actually are is a more precise form of timekeeping. And their original purpose was most often attributed to precise timing and distance calculations attributed to complicated travel, like aviation when you don't have points of reference, submarine navigation, where you're essentially in this sealed box that you can't see out of. Being able to precisely time, say, the next turn, made famous in the movie Hunt for Red October. Of course, they're using a stopwatch chronograph as opposed to a watch chronograph, but I mean, this is the point, right? It's being able to have a more precise form of measurement than just looking at the elapsed time on your typical three-hander, or even worse, a two-hander. So that's really where the development began, and two of the most important companies to come out of Switzerland for that was Breitling and Heuer. They made significant developments in chronograph technology, and this goes back before automatics. But Project 99 is generally accepted to be the first developers of an automatic chronograph because they had their initial sort of release, although not public release, but reveal, so to speak, at Baselworld in January of 1969. Sure, they weren't available to the market until summer of that year, but they were the first ones to show an automatic chronograph wristwatch to the world. Now, of the three automatic chronograph movements that were released in 1969, my personal favorite actually comes from Zenith. That's the El Primero movement, a movement that is essentially still in production today. Sure, it's been improved and innovated upon, but it is essentially that same movement. And what made it so special is the fact that it beats at 5 hertz, right? 36,000. That's impressive. And what's even more impressive is that Zenith had less available resources to it was a much smaller company than the Project 99 group or than Seiko to become a massive watchmaker by the time. So Zenith really achieved something that you wouldn't expect. And maybe in the future, I'll do a more detailed video on the Zenith El Primero as well. But the reason I'm highlighting the Seiko 6139 and subsequently the following release, the 6138, is primarily down to price. If you would like to invest in a vintage automatic chronograph, and that's a risky proposition because you're talking about very complicated movements that are quite old at this time, that could come with a lot of issues unless you find the right buyer and the right model to purchase. But if you want to save yourself some money, and a significant amount of money, your first option is Seiko. And it has the same rich history that Project 99 has and that the Zenith El Primero has. But with Seiko, you find yourself in a more affordable category of vintage watch with a lot of support for each vintage model. There are so many of these available on the market in so many different levels of condition that depending on what your price point may be, I'm sure you can find something if you do your research. Really talk with the seller, ask about the seller, maybe ask people in your watch community where to get them, but you can find something in exceptional quality, working relatively well, that maybe only needs a service to work perfectly. And that's why I'm highlighting them today. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to the channel. Give us a like if you enjoyed the video. And we're trying to get to 5,000 subscribers because when we do, we got a watch giveaway coming. If you've seen one of the previous videos, you'll see which watches are available to win. Subscribe now.